fast food. It's quick, familiar, comforting. But what if your favorite burger joint was hiding a horrific secret? What if that neon sign lit up the site of one of the darkest crimes in history? From golden arches to local diners, these aren't just places we eat. They're places where people died. And some of these cases remain unsolved to this day. You'll never look at fast food the same way again. Brown's Chicken and Pasta. It was January 8th, 1993. The temperature outside was below freezing, but inside Brown's Chicken, 7 people were wrapping up another workday. Among them were the owners, Richard and Lynn Ehlenfeld, and 5 employees, some adults, some teenagers, all just trying to make a living. At around 9 p.m., 2 men walked in after closing time. What seemed like a late-night order quickly turned into a robbery. But this wasn't just about money. The victims were forced into the walk-in cooler and freezer where they were shot execution style, one by one. The next morning, one of the victims' parents showed up, concerned that their child hadn't returned home. Police were called, and what they discovered inside was nothing short of a nightmare. 7 bodies, cold, lifeless, locked inside the freezer. A brutal crime scene that left officers shaken. There were no immediate suspects, no clear motive. Just blood, silence, and one small clue: a piece of chewed chicken in the trash. For nearly 9 years, the case remained unsolved, becoming one of the most haunting cold cases in Illinois history. Then in 2002, a shocking confession surfaced. A woman came forward revealing that her ex-boyfriend had admitted to the killings years ago. His name, Juan Luna. DNA testing linked him to the chicken bone found in the trash at the crime scene. Luna and his accomplice, James Degorski, were arrested and brought to trial. In 2007, Juan Luna was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. 2 years later, James Degorski received the same fate. The case finally had closure, but the damage had been done. The Brown's Chicken restaurant never reopened. The brand itself, once a thriving fast food chain with nearly 300 locations, took a devastating hit. Today, only a handful of stores remain. Families were shattered. A community was scarred. And a small, family-run restaurant became the site of one of the most chilling mass murders in American fast food history. Burger Chef Restaurant. It was November 17, 1978, a chilly Friday night in the town of Speedway, Indiana. At a local Burger Chef restaurant, 4 young employees were working the closing shift. Jane Freet, 20, Daniel Davis, 16, Mark Flemons, 16, Ruth Ellen Shelton, just 17. Around midnight, something happened inside the restaurant. The safe was emptied. The back door was open. But the most shocking part? All 4 employees were gone. At first, police believed it was just a simple case of teenagers stealing money and skipping town. But by Sunday, that theory was shattered. The bodies of all 4 victims were found in a remote wooded area about 20 miles from the restaurant. Daniel Davis and Ruth Shelton had both been shot execution style. Mark Flemons was beaten to death with a chain or metal rod. Jane Fritt, the assistant manager, was stabbed in the chest. The scene offered no fingerprints, no DNA. The killers had taken the time to remove evidence and left almost no trace. The motive? Likely robbery, but some investigators believed there was a personal angle. Perhaps one of the victims recognized the attacker. The amount stolen was around $500. But what kind of killer executes 4 people over a few $100s? Leads came and went. A sketch of 2 suspicious men seen near the restaurant circulated. Several theories emerged: a botched robbery by local criminals, a hit job, even the possibility of someone close to the victims. But no arrests were ever made. And to this day, the case remains one of Indiana's most infamous unsolved crimes. The case devastated the families and haunted the local community for decades. Burger Chef, once a booming chain with over 1,000 locations, never recovered from the PR hit. By the mid-1880s, the brand disappeared completely, absorbed by Hardee's. And while fast food chains often clean up messes by morning, this stain has never been scrubbed away. Taco Bell, Irving, Texas. On March 16, 2020, inside a Taco Bell on North MacArthur Boulevard in Irving, employees were going through their usual evening prep. But tensions had been brewing. 49-year-old Brian Gibson, a former employee who had recently been fired, walked into the store armed with a gun. He wasn't there for a burrito, he was there for revenge. According to witnesses, Gibson walked straight into the restaurant and confronted a current employee named James. In the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by coworkers and fryers, Gibson pulled the trigger. The victim, 35-year-old James, was shot multiple times and pronounced dead on the scene. Panicked workers fled. Customers in the drive-thru watched in horror. Gibson didn't run. He stayed nearby and was arrested within minutes. Police later learned that Gibson had been fired shortly before the incident following several conflicts with co-workers. He allegedly believed James had something to do with it, possibly by reporting him to management. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't random, it was a targeted workplace killing inside a Taco Bell. Gibson was charged with murder, and the community was left shaken. The store closed temporarily, with employees offered counseling. Taco Bell corporate issued a brief statement calling the event a tragedy and offering condolences to the victim's family. For the people working that night, the kitchen never felt the same again. El Memo, Jalisco, Mexico. On May 9, 2021, just before 5 p.m., a group of at least 4 armed men stormed into El Memo, a roadside botanero on the Guadalajara-Morelia Highway in Jocotepec. Jalisco. Inside were several patrons enjoying drinks. Within seconds, gunmen unleashed a barrage of shots. 5 people died instantly, including 2 minors, and at least 2 others were wounded. When police arrived, bodies lay among overturned chairs and tables. Shell casings from different calibers littered the floor. Witnesses reported no warning, just a flash of violence and then silence. Authorities described the attack as a targeted act of cartels or local gangs, not random gunfire. Investigators spoke of a band adjustment, a settling of scores between criminal groups. Despite forensics and efforts by the Jalisco state prosecutor, no arrests were made in the immediate aftermath. The massacre shook the community. Authorities left the restaurant sealed while processing evidence. Locals feared returning. Days later, prosecutors revealed the victims were identified, but the shooters remained at large. For a restaurant named Memo, the name became synonymous with terror. This was not an isolated crime. It happened amid a surge of cartel violence in Jalisco. But what makes it stand out is the location. A public place, a restaurant bar, turned into a killing ground in broad daylight with no escape. Wendy's, Flushing, Queens. On May 24, 2000, around 11 p.m., former Wendy's employee John Benji Taylor, 36, walked into the Flushing restaurant with accomplice Craig Godineau, 30. They took the night manager, Jean Auguste, into the office and forced him to summon 6 other staff under the guise of an urgent meeting. Then the guns came out. The 7 were herded into the walk-in freezer, bound and gagged, duct tape and plastic bags used to muzzle them. Taylor and Godineau shot 5 employees in the head. 2 managed to survive. Patricio Castro, who later called 911, and Jacquione Johnson, both critically wounded. Police collected 8 shell casings, recovered $2,400, and seized a surveillance tape. They arrested Taylor at his Long Island relative's house, thanks to his .38 caliber handgun in a fanny pack and his fingerprint on a box inside the restaurant. Godineau was detained at his clothing store job nearby. Taylor and Godineau pleaded guilty to robbery and murder. Taylor was convicted of 5 first-degree murders on November 19, 2002, and initially sentenced to death. Godineau received life without parole due to a mental disability. In 2007, New York's death penalty was ruled unconstitutional, so Taylor's sentence was commuted. He's now serving life without parole. The massacre shook Flushing's community. A memorial now stands at Queens Botanical Garden, honoring the lost lives. The scene where Wendy's once stood is now a small shopping plaza, a quiet reminder of the horror that unfolded. 5 individuals, aged 18 to 44, including immigrants and students, were executed in cold blood over just a few $1,000s. It wasn't a random crime, it was meticulously planned and carried out by someone who once worked there. This wasn't just robbery, it was betrayal, and its echoes linger in the city's memory. Pizza Hut, Mount Pleasant, Texas. On May 10, 1982, Pizza Hut in Mount Pleasant, about 100 miles east of Dallas, closed as usual around 11 p.m. But that would be the last night it ever served another slice. Sometime after closing, intruders forced their way into the restaurant. They robbed the place, and in the process, 3 employees were brutally killed. Howard McLaughlin, 26 Shirley Thompson, 24 George Landrum, around 40. Police arriving at 2:30 a.m. found the front door unlocked and the cash register emptied. But the horror was in the back. McLaughlin and Landrum had been shot in the head and chest and beaten with a hammer. Thompson suffered a gunshot wound to the arm that entered her chest, blunt trauma, and multiple stab wounds. Investigators believe the killers used a .38 caliber pistol, a butcher knife, and a claw hammer. Authorities suspected a robbery gone horribly wrong, linking the same suspects to a similar armed holdup just a day earlier in Van Zandt County. But despite questioning several people, no arrests were made, and the murders remain unsolved. The killings shocked the community. A beloved local eatery became a scene of horror. That Pizza Hut closed for good, never reopening its doors. Today, the location at 1902 South Jefferson Avenue is just another storefront among many. 3 lives taken over a few $100s or maybe more. A murderous burglary that turned execution style in a place meant for families, friends, and comfort. This tragedy reminds us that even the cheeriest signs can conceal real danger, and that everyday jobs can expose people to unimaginable violence. I can't believe it's yogurt. On December 6, 1991, just before midnight, and I can't believe it's yogurt. Store on West Anderson Lane was closing. Inside were Jennifer Harbison, 17, Eliza Thomas, 17, both employees, and Sarah Harbison, 15, and Amy Ayers, 13, who were there to ride home with friends. Firefighters arrived to find the shop ablaze. After they extinguished the flames, they made a horrific discovery in the storage room. The girls were naked, gagged, bound with their own underwear, stacked atop one another, and each shot in the back of the head execution style. Amy Ayers, found apart, had less fire damage but sustained burn injuries across 25 to 30% of her body. Over 1,200 people confessed, some coerced, many false. In 1999, authorities arrested 4 teens: Springsteen, Scott, Pierce, Wellborn. Springsteen was sentenced to death, Scott to life in 2001. But in 2006-09, their convictions were overturned due to unconstitutional confessions and procedural violations. In 2009, DNA testing revealed an unknown male profile. None matched the former suspects. In 2017, YSTR testing found another lead, but the FBI withheld donor info citing privacy rules. In 2022, federal legislation, the Homicide Victims' Families' Rights Act, was passed partly in response to this case, empowering families to request cold case reviews. The murders shattered Austin's innocence. Hundreds gathered in the community. Billboards reading, "Who killed these girls?" once stood across the city. In March 2025, an HBO/A24 docuseries, The Yogurt Shop Murders, premiered at SXSW and is set to air later this year, delving into the trauma, investigation, and enduring quest for justice. 4 innocent lives, brutally taken, in a place meant for joy and treats. Multiple false confessions, overturned convictions, an unknown male DNA suspect. This case highlights how justice can falter and families can wait decades. It's a stark reminder that even the sweetest venues can become scenes of sheer horror. 8 Immortals Restaurant. It was February 1985. The 8 Immortals Restaurant, a popular local spot known for its pork buns, welcomed a typical dinner crowd. But behind the smiling chef's apron was a man about to commit an atrocity. Proprietor Huang, owner of the restaurant, brutally murdered the entire Zheng family, his landlords and previous owners of the shop. He didn't stop at murder, he dismembered their bodies, chillingly continuing to run the restaurant amid the chaos. And the horror didn't end there. Rumors spread that he'd baked his victims into pork buns, a terrifying culinary urban legend. These rumors inspired the Hong Kong crime movie The Untold Story, also known under shocking titles like Human Pork Bun. The restaurant and upstairs apartments were shut down, then converted into a hotel by 1987. A crime scene wiped clean. Or so it seemed. This isn't just a case of restaurant violence, it's a perversion of trust and hospitality. A place that welcomed strangers became the scene of betrayal and terror. And the urban legend of human meat buns? A reminder that our darkest fears can manifest in the most mundane settings. San Ysidro McDonald's. On July 18, 1984, at around 3:40 p.m., 41-year-old James Oliver Huberty walked into the busy McDonald's armed with a semi-automatic Uzi, a pump-action shotgun, and a 9mm pistol. He began indiscriminately shooting staff and customers, children, elderly, parents, all caught in the crossfire. For 77 minutes, Huberty fired relentlessly, through walls, windows, drive-thru lanes, even at emergency responders trying to save lives. When police finally located him, an officer sniper took him down from a rooftop, ending the horror at approximately 5:17 p.m. By the time it ended, 21 people were dead, including an 8-month-old baby and several teens. 19 others were wounded, some severely. Witnesses described hiding under tables, hearing horror around every corner, and seeing how a quick trip for dinner turned into a nightmare. McDonald's tore down the restaurant within weeks and donated the land to the city. A memorial park now stands there, featuring 21 marble pillars, one for each victim. The site became a community college campus, and to this day, the pillars are adorned with flowers every July 18th. The massacre exposed gaps in active shooter response. San Diego police formed a dedicated SWAT hostage rescue team, upgraded training, tactics, and officer counseling programs. California also passed stricter gun laws that year, including an early assault weapons ban. Today, many in San Ysidro scarcely remember it happened, a painful fact in a border community facing daily challenges. Yet survivors and relatives say the memory lives on through the monument and annual remembrances. Luby's Cafeteria. On October 16, 1991, around 12:39 p.m., 35-year-old George Hennard, an unemployed ex-merchant Marine, rammed his Ford Ranger through the plate glass front window of Luby's Cafeteria on U.S. Highway 190. It was Boss's Day, and the cafeteria was unusually crowded. About 150 people were inside. Hennard immediately began shooting with a Glock 17 and Ruger P89, targeting both staff and customers. Over 14 minutes, he fired around 100 shots, killing 23 people, including an 8-month-old baby, and wounding 27 others. Victims included men, women, seniors, and children. Among them was Lieutenant Colum Stephen Doty, just 2 weeks from retirement, who died shielding a coworker. In one chilling moment, a customer says Hennard yelled, "All women of Keeleen and Belton are vipers." Police and Texas DPS responded, wounding Hennard in a brief exchange. Cornered, Hennard retreated to a restroom and fatally shot himself, bringing the siege to an end. The cafeteria reopened in March 1992, though the scars ran deep. A memorial now stands behind the Keeleen Community Center, and each year hundreds gather to honor the 23 victims. The shooting sparked major changes. Texas passed a concealed carry law in 1995, led in part by survivor Susanna Hupp, who lost her parents that day. San Diego even recognized the need for dedicated active shooter response teams, influenced by tragedy at locations like this. A casual lunch spot, filled with families and co-workers, and in a matter of minutes transformed into a battlefield. It's a haunting reminder that violence can erupt anywhere, even where we feel safest. Behind every fry basket and dollar menu, there's a story. And sometimes, those stories end in bloodshed. These weren't just crimes, they were turning points, forever etched into the walls of places meant to nourish, not destroy. So the next time you walk into a fast food restaurant, look a little closer. History might be hiding in the back booth. If you found this unsettling but fascinating, hit like, subscribe, and let us know which case chilled you the most. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.